Hello, it's Rory here from RH Coaching, and I want to talk about low carb diets. And this is something that I see a lot of people doing. In fact, I often advocate a slightly lower carbohydrate nutritional habits. And if anyone has done any of my free challenges, the 5-day challenge in particular is a large part of that is trying to reduce the carbohydrates that you're having in your diet. But with all this being said, carbohydrates aren't actually the enemy for fat loss. In fact, they're not the enemy at all. You know, they often get a bad reputation because a lot of the time when people do cut out carbohydrates, they do tend to lose quite a lot of body fat. They do tend to lose weight. They do tend to lose centimeters quite quickly. And so they assume that carbohydrates are the enemy and cutting out the carbs is the enemy. And, you know, typically we're thinking like your breads and your potatoes and your pastas and that kind of starchy carbohydrate. And yet carbohydrates is not the enemy. In fact, if you cut out carbs for too long, it can actually do the opposite, and it will really put at risk your fat loss journey, and it will make it a lot harder and a lot slower if you do it for too long. So first of all, the whole benefit when it comes to weight loss of dropping your carbohydrates is carbohydrates, when stored in the body, stores a lot of water, absorbs a lot of water. So if you lose those carbohydrates, you're going to lose a lot of water as well. That water loss is going to happen quite quickly. So if you reduce carbohydrates in your diet, then you are going to lose quite a lot of water in quite a short space of time. And that's what leads to that quick weight loss. But the problem with dropping carbs for too long and dropping carbs over a long period of time is we use carbohydrates for fuel. We use carbohydrates for energy. So if you take away the carbs, then we need to find something else to use for fuel. And what we find instead, what our body finds instead, is proteins. And proteins make up our muscle. Now, if we're starting to use protein for fuel and we're starting to use our muscle for fuel, then that muscle has to be broken down and we're going to start losing that muscle. Okay. And the problem with losing the muscle then is our metabolic rate will slow down, because when we've got more muscle, we have more metabolic rate. Our metabolic rate is higher. We need that muscle to burn more calories. So if we reduce our carbohydrates, then we start looking into other energy sources, which comes a lot of the time from protein in our muscle. So if we start eating away at our muscle to produce energy, then we are going to slow down our metabolic rate, because that muscle requires calories. And if the muscle isn't there, we don't need to burn the calories. So the lesson here is, yes, reduce your carbohydrates. We overconsume carbohydrates in general in this part of the world. We do not need as much because we are not as active as we used to be. But do not drop them too low and do not drop them for too long. Otherwise, you will start having effects on your metabolic rate and your whole fat loss journey will be compromised as a result.